Hey guys, well, we're on one of Arnie's famous shop tour field trips, and I'm with these guys. I got Chucksee, Mr. Sean Provost, Mr. CK, my buddy Pedro. We're here to see what the Yates Group does to the CT525. So walk with me as we take a shop tour and see what they can do for us. See y'all later.
So obviously you guys know Robert Yates is our founder. Robert was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2016. Robert passed from cancer in 2017. Long storied career, as everybody knows. Championships and a lot of wins. You're going to get to see a lot of that right now. And cool little story as we stand here. This floor, when Robert passed away, we had a 650-acre farm. And in 2014, we had a huge storm and a tree got struck by lightning, and this is the tree from the farm, which is really cool. Our neighbors up there has a sawmill, so he cut it up and had it all stacked. And when Robert passed, Carolyn, his wife, wanted to do something, and Robert was a very quiet person. He didn't like a lot of attention. So what you guys are getting ready to see, the general public has never really gotten to see, because all of these trophies and pictures and things that you're going to see were stored away. He didn't have a museum like most team owners. Robert's philosophy was he always looked to the future. He never wanted to look in the past. He always wanted to look to the future and do better. And that was his mentality. Right behind you here is our conference room, so there's some trophies and some things in here. We've won the championship with our motors for the last 6 years out of the Modified Series. And just to give you a little history on how far my family goes back into racing, right behind you here, the picture. This is actually my father back in 1971. I was only a few months old. That's at Saga Speedway out in California.
So you didn't have a choice.
No, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. A lot of cool people. It's more about the journey, you know, than it really is the racing. I hate, to say. It's about just like meeting all you guys, This is something that'll go down in the history books.
All right, guys, so now we're in the belly of the beast. We just left a little area that had a lot of the trophies. Apparently, Mr. Yates didn't like to have those trophies out. He believed in not looking at the past and looking at the future. So since his passing, the family and the guys who work here wanted to start to go ahead and put some of these things out there. So it's amazing, some of the trophies that we just saw. We're gonna walk now into this section here, like I said, the belly of the beast, where they take the motors, the CT525, and they balance and blueprint it. So let's keep on walking as we enjoy this tour that not everybody in the world ever gets. So we're very fortunate that David's letting us do this.
We'll talk a little bit about what we currently do today with the NASCAR spec engine. That is the only program that is currently in the shop. So we can scan that and we'll tell you when it was done. Carl Wagner designed this deal originally for GM, and he gave them the rights to the program. And what it does, it allows you to take a coilover motor and convert it back to a distributor and put a carburetor on it, take all the electronics off the motor. Basically what we want to do is we want to see all the externals on the motor. We don't want anything hidden inside, or we don't want anything hidden in the ECU. It makes it easier to police, and take care of. And then honestly, there's a lot of guys like us that are older that we like carburetors, we like distributors. That's what we grew up on. It's a newer generation that, the fuel injection side and such. So I've been pretty fortunate to be on both sides doing the road racing program for Roush Yates on the Grand Am Daytona prototype stuff. So, and you can see the mark right there on it. So this is the only muffler that these guys are allowed to run in that series.
Is that like a QR, similar to a QR code?
Similar, but we call it square dot. But every one of these lifters has been inspected for any types of defects. But again, that's just one of the processes and procedures. But again, this program is a cost containment program. I had to figure out a good way that was going to be cost effective to move on to an aftermarket block. Dart with Richard Baskins, I worked very closely with him, and he took our block and did some did some different machine work and omitted some machine work to keep the cost down. And it's the only block in the aftermarket family that has a stock cam tunnel location. So all my valve train and everything works right out of my GM motor and sticks it right in the dart block engine. So there's 7 holes across the gasket, and there are these bottom holes right here. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. If you look at a stock GM gasket, those holes are not there. And what that does is it takes the water away from over the tops of the chambers. And that's what we were talking about yesterday.
So can you quickly describe the plumbing that you were talking about to cool the heads? Is there a is it directional? Is it non-directional? Is it?
We'll look at a.
Can we drag that motor in?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got one with a.
We're asking for one NASCAR secret, and it's that's we've all been talking about the
I
water.
noticed the LS1, the 5.7 comes with 4 steam port, locations on their heads, and then you go move to LS2, LS3, and they only have them up front. So what is your opinion?
2 reasons for that. The first reason is, like I said yesterday, when GM omitted these holes to get the chambers hotter to make the catalytic converters work, that's great. They got that part fixed. They created a second problem. They get what we call off-gassing in the water system. And what that is you get air bubbles or gas pockets come up off the top of the chamber inside the water jackets. They have to get that escaped from the system as quickly as possible. Well, on the LS2 stuff, that's just on the front, that's on a street motor that you're not turning the thing very hard.
Right.
The LS7s and stuff were designed to run harder, RPM harder, so they're generating more temperature.
Sure.
So that's where they went ahead and activated the rear holes to get the rest of the air and the gas out, which he's rolling a motor in here now. All right, so you always heard me talk about the water tank. We call this the expansion tank, and this is your radiator cap up here now, not on the radiator itself. We utilize, you can see that it's hooked up in the rear, and it has a T in the center.
Yes.
2 equal lines on either side, okay? 2 equal forces pushing on each other will turn and go forward, okay? What you see in the industry now is you see a lot of guys that'll take lines and they'll go from here to here to here
Correct.
to here and forward.
Correct.
All you've done is, do we have an older one? The old setup somewhere? What you originally saw is a guy would jump off the left head and come over here, and this would be a T right here, so there'd be a fitting on the top and it would come forward.
Right.
Well, with this one teed into the side of it, fluid takes the path of least resistance,
Sure.
right? Pretty simple, we all agree with that. So the fluid that was coming out of this head, coming straight up and out, was dominant over the fluid that was coming this direction, teed into the side of it. So any air and gas would always back up in this head, and you would actually start to detonate that side of the motor. And what we found with our programs, so that's a stock, that's actually one of your 525s.
Like straight out the
That's
box.
right out of the box.
Mine looks a lot different, but it's actually that.
So,
See,
these are plugged on. They're limited. So what do you do to this?
So
one?
again,
You do that? Is that what you end up
yes.
with the steam
For
ports?
your guys' application, we will go that direction. Again, because what we're trying to do with this thing and how hard we're turning it, and the temperatures that we're gonna sustain. Like, would this work? Probably. But the thing that would scare me would be the on the street driving and sitting in traffic and letting the thing heat soak and getting hotter that way. If I can take something and make it better with minimal cost and minimal changes. And for us, it's all about, with the race cars, we want to put as much tape on the nose of the car. So we have as little drag as possible, as much downforce as possible. We're going to go faster. So if I had this on there and I was no tape on the nose of the car and I was running water temps of 200 and no tape on the car, and now I put that system on it and I tape up 3/4 of the nose of the car and I'm still running 200, what would you want to do? And now I'm going faster because I'm going in a straight line with more downforce and less drag.
And we're winning.
It's called creativity.
This is the this is going to be your pump now, because this is a dry sump motor.
Yes, this is dry sump. This is the billet fuel pump. We don't run any electric pumps in our stuff. Your guys' stuff will have electric pumps on it, so we won't have to worry about this front
So not
cover.
only do they run a distributor, that kit also consists of the fuel pump.
Correct, it's in the front cover.
So for you guys, a small block Chevy's got it on the side running off the cam. We're still running off the cam, off the seam cam lobe style design. Just we're going up.
Is there one? No, it's already in that motor. Grab a spud off one of these cards. Right here, there you go. Second shelf. in the red tray, second shelf up.
We're still utilizing
Up, right there.
350 technology using the cam lobe. So the cam, does it have, so we have to add it. The cam does not come with the lobe. We have to connect this to the cam.
Correct, yeah, that's actually on the front side of the distributor gear.
Right. Typically we have our 3 volts there, is what I'm looking for.
That will bolt
That's
to
the
the cam.
adapter.
Okay.
And that you got your, behind this, you'll actually have
There's a keyway.
your cam gear.
Okay. And then she gets bolted on. And then there's our spud.
Yep.
This is the spud, this is the lobe, this is the adapter.
And this lobe is, the lobe is made out of tool steel, but it's DLC coated. So we don't have any interference between the fuel pump arm and the DLC coating versus the tool steel.
I had a spud in my hand in a NASCAR shop. My kids are gonna think I'm so cool.
Yeah. There is a scale at the back door that everybody has to get weighed. So
Guys, did you see the, here you goes the
Look over there.
squirrel.
back to the water system a little bit. The simplest way, and this is how I learned by some of the best in the business, take your water system and just take a black Sharpie and draw a line on the direction that you think the water flow is going. And 90% of the time what you're gonna find is all of a sudden you're gonna be like, oh shit, you got one line with water going this way, you got another line with water going this way, and the two hit each other. That's the most common mistake that people make in
In the LS world.
the world, just to plumbing. They think more lines are better or certain things are better, and it's not always the case.
Let me ask you on a stock, let's say intake, right? The LS 3, 2, 1 that has that intake, the plastic one. What would be the direction of plumbing? Would you just leave, if this is the LS3, would you just leave the front one to do its job? Or would you add?
I would get rid of this immediately. This is wrong right here, and this is your T right here. Remember what I was talking about when the. So this head, the left head, is actually going to be dominant. The fluid is going to come out easier out of this way than this one teed into the side of it. As this fluid is coming up, it's hitting it. It's fighting that
intersection.
Yes. So I would do away with that.
So you would do your own plumbing like you did over here?
Yes. And
what if you didn't have this to route them to? Because I see you did the same length lines like you were talking about.
So on the truck, the way his truck was yesterday, what I would do is if we had the time we were going to the racetrack, I would take this line off right here, which is this one.
Sure.
I would flip it around, I'd run it back to the tank.
Right.
Okay.
The reservoir tank?
Then I would take these two in the front and I would tee them together and I'd run that line and I'd run them back to the tank. Okay. What you're doing is, with what we had yesterday, when they're hooked up on these ports here on the water pump, they were hooked up here.
Right.
There were one right there, there was one right there, there was another one over here. That's great, they're getting the air and the gas out of the head, but they created a secondary problem. They're letting it come out the upper water neck, and they're sending that air and the gas through the radiator. Now the radiator is less efficient because you're passing air through the core of the radiator instead of full water.
Right.
And ultimately that air and gas is going to go back through the lower hose and go back into the system. So wherever your pop-off point is, this is our pop-off here is the cap. So I want to get the air and the gas just underneath the cap, so that's the first thing that leaves the system.
This unit's going to a,
Gotcha. Grab me that, please. On the shelf on the right-hand side.
Would that be like the catch can he had on the passenger side?
Nope.
No?
The tank here on the passenger side is this tank right here.
Oh, okay.
that was pressurized.
His radiator cap was that black spud sticking out. That's a one-way check valve which acts as a cap. Okay, it's a different type of system. It's a
They burp out. They got it.
so it's we call it a high pressure system, and we have what we call an air spring in there. So that tank would get about halfway full, and then he would take a special adapter to the top of that tank, and it's got a valve on it. He would open the valve, he would dial in pressure, and he'd set the gauge. He would close the valve, and then he would take the gauge off. You have now an air spring in the system, okay? So now as the system expands, it takes that air spring and it starts to compress it even more, and whatever that one-way valve is set at, we call it a PRV valve, it'll start popping off and releasing a little bit of the spring. The problem is what gets people in trouble is if they don't understand the way that works and how much air spring you need for what temperature you pressurized it at, you can lose that air spring. The system can overcome the spring, pop the spring, and start pushing water out. Now you don't have any control over the system anymore. When the system tries to go into a recovery state, as soon as yellow flag comes out, or say you're tucked up under somebody for a while and the thing gets hot and you're pushing water, as soon as you pull out a line and get air to the nose of the car, the system will go into a recovery state and start to shrink. It'll actually, that PRV valve won't pull anything back in. It can't. It's only a one-way valve. Okay? So now the radiator hose and everything start to collapse. So get yourself in trouble that way. This system is really good for the general user, and I even do it over here with the people that I'm dealing with. That's how, is the high pressure tank a little better? It's a little better, but it's a lot more difficult to maintain.
Right.
This is no different than what you have in your street cars right now out in there. You have an expansion tank and you have a recovery tank. Alan's got
You made a good point. NASCARs are at high RPMs, tucked behind each other with no airflow. Matter of fact, the airflow is trying to get around the car as fast as possible. The only guy, whoever's in the lead, gets airflow, but that's not the fastest car. The car behind him is the fastest car.
But it doesn't matter. I could have a car out in the lead that has an efficient radiator. He doesn't have the proper radiator for his application. You can't just go buy a radiator off the shelf and think that it's going to work correctly. We have actually tube sizes. We have fin counts. Guys will go over to SRI and they'll buy a radiator and the thing looks brand new. Well, the problem, that radiator was designed for Daytona to run 200 miles an hour. Right. So imagine the amount of head pressure that you have on the front of that radiator pushing air through it. We can run a super tight fin count and we can dissipate the heat out of the radiator better.
For that rate.
Now that you take that radiator and you put it in one of your guys' trucks and you go and run on the street, it ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna cope.
Yeah.
So,
Now we're talking about the metal density versus the rate of air that's going to go through it. It cannot cool it. It needs a higher amount of air pressure to do its job.
correct.
We're not driving 200 miles per hour.
Correct.
Going taking our kids.
So the radiator has to be based on the specific application. And there's good radiators out there. It's just the more money you spend, the better they are. The cheaper you spend, you get what you pay for is the motto.
Yeah, we talked yesterday about this engine deal. We're gonna have a radiator package, engine package, everything, so everything works together. Ain't
Right.
no guessing.
It has to. Yeah.
And we want it to be able to where, you guys can call up if God forbid, the radiator gets wrecked or whatever, you guys can call up to the manufacturer that's gonna make it and they'll make it right there, that exact same spec. Because as you know, tanks are always different, necks are always in different locations and things like that. You want to try and standardize it to keep the cost down. Again, at the spec,
At the spec
level.
Yeah.
The Outlaw deal, it's fair game. Run what you brung and hope you brought enough. So this is the expansion tank. This would normally be on the firewall, and you can mount this anywhere you want. I don't care if you put it on the left-hand side down on the bottom. I don't care if you put it on the roof of the car. We want it as close to this tank as possible. The reason for that is the recovery system. The way it works is as the system gets hot, this port right here will have a line going to the bottom of the tank. Okay, so it sits like this, pushes the water in the bottom. Okay, as soon as you pull out a line, or as soon as you shut that truck off, or as soon as the yellow comes out and you slow down, the system goes into recovery state and it starts to draw the water back and back into here. This radiator cap is this is another thing a lot of people miss about them. The cap has two seals on it. It's got one here and it's got one here. Okay, this is called a recovery cap. If you have a cap that does not have a seal here on the top, it's not a recovery cap. All it is a pressure cap. So what this does is the system expands. You got two seal surfaces here. You got one right here. That small little tiny edge is the seal on this surface here. As the system builds pressure, the cap pops open, releases the pressure out of here and sends it to the recovery tank there. Now when the system goes into recovery state, which is the opposite direction, you have this gasket here on top, which is sealing off from here to here. So I got a cavity right here now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. See that hole in the cap? See that little tiny hole in there?
Yeah.
This sits on the thing like that. Well, as the vacuum in the motor starts to be created and suck water through here,
It's like the water back.
it opens up this little valve right here in the bottom of the cap.
Right.
Okay, so the water comes through the bottom of that cap right there.
And that brings our reservoir water right back inside the system.
Keeps this full all the time, 100%. If that ball drops, that's a dead indicator, a dead giveaway that there's air in the system somewhere, and you've just compressed that air. So now you have air pockets somewhere in the system. Now again, if the system is completely full and you pressurize it, it drops about ½ inch. The system is 100% water, and you've compressed the water to its max, and that's all it can do. And the reason why the pressure system is a tiny bit better, when you compress water against a surface, it will dissipate the heat quicker, faster.
So ambient pressure is 14.7 bar. At what pressure are we actually, because the air is more compressible than the water is, at what point are we overcompensating the air pressure to push the water? Is it at the 24 or 30? Are we just doubling the 14.7 bar to get, or is it just a solid number 24, 30?
The pressure, the high pressure system works its best at the initial startup as a system is warming up, okay? Because it's going to dissipate it quicker as it's warming up. But once you get to that point and everything's heat soaked, yes, about the 24 psi number is your number.
Double up, we can basically double up almost our ambient pressure,
Yeah.
and that'll hold the water at bay.
Radiator caps. This is a 27 to 29 pound cap. You want to make sure that you have a cap that's suitable for your system. You know, what kind of hoses are you running? What kind of radiator core are you running? You know, can that stuff handle it? Is the key on the pressure side. Obviously, as you know, the more pressure you can run, the higher the boiling point, the better the system's going to be.
I'm left. We are only talking about water cooling. We haven't talked about pistons, valve, horse, nothing. We're talking about just temperature.
But this is
So-
going.
And this is a 3-week class by itself.
He had
This right here, at the end of the day, you know, you go do the autocross, the road race, the street challenge, and all these guys are on the side of the road. You're going, y'all should go to Yates and listen to what they guys say.
Yes, sir.
You know, but this right here eliminates all your problems.
Yeah.
You don't never have a
You have to
problem.
go back.
You know.
So, you know, he had a line yesterday going from the radiator. He had a line going from the radiator back to the tank. Red line. You saw
Yeah,
that?
that's on
Okay.
side, yeah.
On this side over here. Okay. This is the port that's going to go to the radiator. Okay.
Okay.
Not that goes
So
on
the
there.
steam
Is that
vent
port-
No.
See, that's where a misconception. People
Right.
don't realize what that line is, and I told a couple guys yesterday what it
Okay.
is. What that line is for is when you shut the truck off, like you know how we were starting and stopping the truck yesterday, sitting there running? Okay. The radiator heat soaks and you get this quick spike within milliseconds. The heat in the radiator almost half the time it'll jump up 20, 25 degrees. And that you build that pressure goes whoop, and swells.
Yep.
You have to be able to get that pressure out of the cap as quick as possible. If you don't have that relief, then the radiator core itself will swell and you'll start to slowly blow the core up.
Is that because we've eliminated engines turned off? We've eliminated circulation.
Correct. Correct. It actually does the reverse effect. Say I have,
We're not cooling no more.
say if I take and I measure the temperature at the radiator and it's 180 degrees, okay? And I shut it off and I have no water circulation, but the water that stopped in there just came out of the motor and that water's 200 degrees. The pressure increases instantaneously. You have to, that pressure has to leave the system as quick as it can. If you don't have, if I didn't have this line hook, I can run it without the line, but I'm gonna slowly swell the core up over time,
Right.
you know?
Which will one day give us defeat at a race because then we were broken radiator or something happened. Why was the torque to yield invented? Do you guys know? And should everyone just go to ARP bolts and just make their lives better? What's the opinion?
I have my answer, what's yours?
I was gonna say, this is awesome. I think the torque to yield is not a very good deal.
Thank you.
Okay, but you gotta understand why it was designed. It was designed because aluminum block, aluminum head grow. Okay,
There you go.
so with a torque bolt, it doesn't stretch as much.
Right.
Okay, so they're trying to give it some, this bolt is designed to give a little give to it.
Okay.
While it's torqued up and retain its clamping load. Okay. The ARP bolt will do the same thing.
One of the things that interested me was the head gaskets. That's something I could take a 6.0, 243 heads and use your head gasket and pick up water flow. Okay, need to sit.
So this room here that we're in is our carburetor room. By the time we're done with these carburetors, to make them all the same and make sure they're legit, we have 8 to 10 hours in each carburetor. And what's funny is people think we were up in South Boston, Virginia, which is up in the mountains, right? And we were there testing, sampled the weather, got my numbers and said, okay, this is a jet you need to run. The next day we were down at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and you would think that there'd be totally different jets. They're not. The weather was so similar that it was calling for the same jet. And if I wasn't there, the guys didn't know, their cars wouldn't run right. They wouldn't be as efficient as they needed to be, you know? This carburetor here has been in service now for probably 6 or 7 years. But what I want to show you is there's some of the work that's done in the carburetor. You can see the encryption again. So if I scan that, that'll tell me when the carburetor was produced. And I put secondary encryptions down here so the guys don't go in and start playing with the bodies or changing the bodies. We straighten the boosters, we epoxy them, then we safety wire them. We are spec'd on the air bleeds, 3272 air bleeds. We're spec'd on the cams, we're spec'd on the power valves, we're spec'd on the pumps. All that stuff needs to stay the same. You got to look long term, and you got to look ahead, not look as a competitor. You got to be a promoter now. That's that's a totally different aspect, and it's a hard thing to separate. You got to look 5-10 years down the road today, what your vision is and what you want.
Well, let me ask you, how long do you think the CT525 motor is going to be around?
Long time. It's brand new. You couldn't get a 604 or 602 to do what you did yesterday.
Wow. That'll be one day. I'd like to come and see the 525 taken apart, because what makes it so awesome?
Just little technology things that they've learned over the years. It's nothing crazy. It's some of the parts in it. Again, could you put better parts in the 525? Sure, you can. But is that really the premise of what we're trying to accomplish here? You're trying to get the enthusiast out of his garage at a cost containment price to come out and have fun.
Enjoy it and have fun.
Enjoy. So that's why I think you've got to have both sides of it. You got to have the spec, and you got to have you can have the outlaw.
Yeah,
you guys
absolutely.
will be the outlaw guys.
Normally when you pull these things out of the box, if you touch it, you get cut. So we go through and deburr inside, outside, everywhere. So we'll deburr the main caps, flat sand them, put main caps on, torque it up, and then we put it in the line hone and line hone the block. So now the line, that's the base of the block. Then we'll put it in here and we'll cut the deck to, a lot of times they'll be twisted, they'll be not square. So we'll go in and deck them square to 9-inch 240. That's we can go to 9-inch 235, but if you do that right from the get-go and you have a problem when you overheat it or you punch a hole in the radiator and it warps the deck, you're done. You have to buy a new block.
The boater's going to tell you a story. If you build your motor and you go run it for a while, you come home, take it apart, and you look at all the parts and pieces, it's going to tell you what it wants. It's no different here. Talking about finish of the bores and such, every one of our blocks, every cylinder gets checked with a profilometer and gets checked for the finish. We're actually playing around with some stuff right here that Alan's been working on, but we look at the RA, the RZ, the RK, the RPK, and the RVK numbers. Those all stand for something in that finish. And we're looking at a cross between horsepower and longevity. I can make big horsepower, but I can kill the rings in just a couple races, and that's not cost effective at this level. One of the cool things I did, and we'll talk about it as we get rolling with the 525, we'll figure out engine number. We'll figure out what I did originally with the GM blocks. I started in 2011 when Robert started this deal. I started with 001. Okay? We made it from 2011 till the middle of, I think around, was it 15? I think it was 15. And we ended up into, actually 16, we ended up into the 600s with the GM blocks before they went away. The problem with the GM block is they cracked the main webs in them. So that was the reason for such a high count. We're doing about 100 blocks a year as an average. So now with the dart blocks, I went to 1,000. I started with 1,000. This happens to be block number 95 because it's 1095. So this was the 95th dart block that we did. And this number, and just to show everybody, it's in the, it's marked right there as well on the China wall, okay? And inside these encryptions right here, if I was to scan this right now, it's gonna have the part number, the sequential number, which is 1095. It just happens to be the sequential as the block number. Every time you change something, the cost goes up. So you really gotta pay attention. You always gotta keep that in mind. You gotta maintain performance. You gotta increase reliability, and you gotta decrease costs. Those are always factors that you got to be watching all the time, because you'll price yourself right out of the ballpark with the crowd of people that you're trying to attract. Like you heard Don talk about yesterday, running the 525 in the sprint car wide open at 7,200 RPMs, just flat flipping. And we haven't taken one back apart yet.
Right.
Okay, so now we need to learn by going to the track and doing some testing with you guys and figuring out what this motor, how it's going to respond and how it's going to react. What are the things that we're going to see? You know, we're going to need the motor back multiple times to take it apart and look at it and see what's going on, and learn. Like I said, that the motor's going to tell you a story. The motor's going to tell you what it wants. You know, for example, people talk about balancing of engines. Okay, balancing is a theory. There is no right or wrong to the balancing. The balancing is the motor is going to tell you what balance it wants. You know, so one guy says, "Oh, you got to balance it this way." The other guy says, "You got to balance it this way." No. Put it in the balance it a certain way, put it in the motor, and then take it back apart and start looking at the rod bearings and the main bearings. The motor's going to tell you what it wants. There has to be some proving grounds have to get put in place, and testing that's got to be done to figure out what, for this specific application and for what we're doing. You know, that truck is hooked up so hard, and you know, the harmonic, it could be as simple as the harmonics in the motor might be different. I may need to change the damper O-rings in it, change the rubber durometer in the O-rings for that motor, for your application, which is different than my application. This is all the stuff that comes in the kit for the 27.5. You know, like I said, it's about 615 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. But, you know, you got to look at the cost versus the reward. You know, yeah, we could probably do something like this for some of you kind of one-off stuff for the outlaw stuff, but for the masses, it's hard to justify 27.5 at that level. So this is the 1182 head that we've done. Run your hands over them. Just feel how kind of sharp everything is. You know, all the edges just got pretty good down in here, all around here. Just everything is pretty sharp. Okay. It's not my job. I don't want to drive the cost up to sit and deburr them and stuff. It's up to the engine builder, how the engine builder wants to do it. We talked about the number. Again, you see the 243, but you see the RY?
Yeah.
This is our head.
Yep.
This isn't a GM head, this is our head. So now this head, you can just see it says race prepped on it. All that means is this is a head that Alan has spent 2 or 3 hours deburring these heads, and this is what we do in our shop. This is the work that we do. Look at the spark plug holes here. See the nice radius you put in here?
Yeah, I'll
pull one of those out and look at them.
I know, night and day, sorry. Yep.
See how sharp, feel how sharp that is. You'll cut your freaking fingers, you'll cut your boots trying to put the spark plug wires on, things like that. So we do that. You feel in here and just come around and run your hand all over it. You feel everything's,
That's nice.
that's just the time. That's what we do here. And I was like, look, if we wreck a car and I wreck a couple of these tubes, they have to buy a whole header. These collectors are as expensive or more expensive than the primary tubes. So now I've gotten them to understand that we have a jig and a fixture that the headers can go in at any time. I'm missing a collector on here. There's just one piece missing. So now we have the option of, you notice the oval collector now instead of the round. That actually gives us a little bit of an aero advantage under the car. But it also is a packaging issue. So if the teams, for whatever reason, in their particular, say, older race cars, the floorboards are different, and they can't get that round collector in there because it's a 3.5-inch round, we can go to an oval. Now, if they damage it, they wreck it. Say they crash right front, they knock the tubes off it. All they have to do is replace the primary section, but those 2 collectors are still okay. That's half the price of the header. You know, so it's a huge savings.
All right, guys. Well, we're finishing up our tour here at Robert Yates. David has given us a tour of the whole entire facility. Guys, when it comes to the LS motor, I feel like I'm just a little bit smarter. There's a lot to learn. There's so much intricacy in the motor. There's so many things that we got to do better. So, guys, there are things that they will sell you. I'm buying a set of head gaskets for our new truck, and so I'm excited. But guys, this has been an awesome shop tour. the guys at Provost Motorsports, CKMagazine, Pro Touring Truck Shootout, Jimmy Bullard, Chucksee. We've all had a great time. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and it should increase your questions on the LS motor, which Mr. David can answer. See y'all guys later. All right, guys. Well, this is one of the last nights that we've been doing the shop tour. It's kind of like a little vacation business situation we've put together. We've been talking about the Pro Touring Truck driving series. Right in front of us, we're talking about one of the frames here. I got Jimmy Bullard from MRCfab. I got Chucksee. I got, of course, Mr. Sean Provost. We've had some other guys that were with us this weekend. They've gone home already. And of course, we're at the shop talking about the future of the vehicle, the future of the program, and we're very, very, very excited. Guys, there's a lot of work that it takes to organize these things, and you can't do it without a great team. And I'm surrounded by a lot of great people, so we've enjoyed ourselves. We've learned a lot today. We've seen a lot
of good stuff.
NASCAR stuff, engine stuff. Deals that are happening that are monumental.
The evolution of the whole series and autocross to road course.
The road course. What do you think, Sean?
I just want to go fast and not brake.
Right now.
I think.
And we're going to be able to do that.
We're going to be. Yeah.
And we're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and got all the right people and. It's going really good.
Yeah, it's we literally have the warm fuzzy feeling on all of us because it's happening. It's happening. We've thought about it. We've made some moves. It's happening, guys. We hope we see you in April. The same guys that you see right here are going to be in April at Wild Horse Pass Motorsports Park, April 10th and 11th. We are having, if you guys don't know, yes, it's an autocross for trucks. But we are also fans of the truck show. These are guys, these are heavy hitters right here in the truck show. We like to see them going fast. We like to see them standing still. We like to see them low. We like to see them fast. These are enthusiasts right here. This is the real deal. This is a dream team, you know, as far as I'm concerned. I hope you guys join us out there. Thank you for this adventure that we've had. It's priceless. It really is. These are friends for life. Now, if you want to beat us, get yourself a frame, come out to the track, show us what's up. See y'all later.
Peace.
See ya.